When a decorated veteran returned home from serving his country, he never imagined his biggest battle would be against his own HOA. But when two power-hungry board members tried to sell his home illegally, the fight for justice began. And the shocking outcome will leave you speechless. In a story that has left a community in disbelief, two former Homeowners Association HOA board members, often referred to as HOA cops, have been sentenced to jail for their brazen attempt to sell a veteran's home illegally. The case, which unfolded in a quiet suburban neighborhood, has sparked outrage across the nation, raising questions about the power and accountability of HOAs. The victim, a decorated U.S. Army veteran named John Carter, had served multiple tours overseas before returning home to settle down with his family. Carter, who had fallen behind on his HOA dues due to financial struggles, found himself at the center of a nightmare when he discovered that his home was being put up for sale without his knowledge or consent. The two former HOA board members, identified as Linda Harper and Robert Mills, were accused of exploiting their positions of authority to target Carter. According to court documents, Harper and Mills had repeatedly harassed Carter over unpaid dues, even though he had been working with the HOA to set up a payment plan. Instead of following proper legal procedures, the duo allegedly conspired to sell Carter's home at a fraction of its market value to a friend of theirs. The scheme began to unravel when Carter received a notice from a real estate agent informing him that his property had been listed for sale. Shocked and confused, Carter immediately contacted local authorities, who launched an investigation into the matter. What they uncovered was a disturbing pattern of corruption and abuse of power within the HOA. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Harper and Mills had bypassed legal protocols to initiate the sale of Carter's home. In most states, HOAs are required to follow strict guidelines when dealing with unpaid dues, including providing ample notice to homeowners and obtaining court approval before taking any action. However, Harper and Mills had allegedly forged documents and falsified records to make it appear as though they had followed the proper steps. Carter, with the help of a pro bono legal team, fought back against the illegal sale. His attorneys argued that the actions of Harper and Mills were not only unethical, but also a violation of Carter's rights as a homeowner and a veteran. The case quickly gained national attention, with veterans advocacy groups and housing rights organizations rallying behind Carter. The courtroom was tense as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict in the case against Linda Harper and Robert Mills, the two former HOA board members accused of conspiring to illegally sell John Carter's home. The trial, which had captivated the local community and drawn national attention, was finally coming to a close. For Carter, a decorated U.S. Army veteran who had served his country with honor, the outcome of this case would determine whether justice would be served or if the abuse of power by the HOA would go unpunished. The prosecution had presented a compelling case, meticulously detailing how Harper and Mills had abused their positions of authority within the HOA to target Carter. Evidence showed that the duo had forged documents, falsified records, and bypassed legal protocols to initiate the sale of Carter's home. Witnesses testified to the harassment Carter had endured, including threatening letters and phone calls demanding payment for overdue HOA dues, even though Carter had been working with the HOA to set up a payment plan. The defense, on the other hand, argued that Harper and Mills had acted in good faith, claiming they were simply trying to enforce the rules of the HOA. However, their arguments fell flat in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. As the judge read the verdict, the room fell silent. Harper and Mills were found guilty on multiple charges, including fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The judge, visibly angered by the defendants' actions, condemned their behavior as a blatant abuse of power and a betrayal of the trust placed in them by their community. The judge emphasized that HOAs are meant to serve homeowners, not exploit them, and that Harper and Mills had violated not only the law but also the basic principles of fairness and decency. In sentenced Harper and Mills to 2 years in jail, the judge sent a clear message that such abuses of power would not be tolerated. Additionally, the defendants were ordered to pay restitution to Carter for the emotional distress and financial harm they had caused. The judge also mandated that they complete community service and attend ethics training should they ever hold positions of authority again. The sentence was a victory not only for Carter, but for all homeowners who have ever felt powerless in the face of an overreaching HOA. For Carter, the verdict was a moment of vindication. In his victim impact statement, he spoke passionately about the toll the ordeal had taken on him and his family. "I fought for this country only to come home and have to fight for my own home," he said. "No one should have to go through what I went through." Carter described the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, and the fear of losing the home he had worked so hard to provide for his family. He also expressed gratitude for the support he had received from the community, his legal team, and veterans advocacy groups who had rallied behind him throughout the case. The case against Harper and Mills highlighted the broader issue of HOA overreach and the need for greater accountability. While many HOAs operate fairly and effectively, stories like Carter's serve as a stark reminder of what can happen when power is concentrated in the wrong hands. HOAs, which are often run by volunteer board members, have significant authority over homeowners, including the ability to impose fines, place liens on properties, and even initiate foreclosure proceedings in some cases. However, this authority is not without limits, and Harper and Mills's actions demonstrated a clear disregard for the legal and ethical boundaries that govern HOAs. In the aftermath of the trial, the community began to reckon with the fallout from the scandal. Many homeowners expressed shock and anger that such corruption could occur in their neighborhood. Some called for sweeping reforms to prevent similar abuses in the future, including stricter oversight of HOAs and greater protections for homeowners. Others praised Carter for his courage in standing up to the HOA and holding Harper and Mills accountable for their actions. The case also sparked a broader conversation about the treatment of veterans in the United States. Carter, who had sacrificed so much for his country, found himself fighting a battle on the home front that he never should have had to face. His story resonated with veterans and their families across the nation, many of whom have faced similar struggles with housing insecurity and financial instability. Advocacy groups seized on the case as an example of the challenges veterans often face when transitioning back to civilian life, and called for greater support for those who have served their country. As for Carter, the resolution of the case marked the end of a long and painful chapter in his life. With the legal battle behind him, he could finally focus on rebuilding and moving forward. "I'm just grateful that justice was served," he said. "But this isn't just about me. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Carter's fight had not only secured justice for himself, but had also shed light on a systemic issue that affects countless homeowners across the country. The case of John Carter versus the HOA serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of accountability, fairness, and the need to protect those who have sacrificed so much for their country. It is a story of resilience, courage, Detroit, and the enduring fight for justice. A fight that, in this case, ended with a victory for the little guy. As the community begins to heal, the lessons learned from this case will hopefully lead to meaningful change, ensuring that no one else has to endure what John Carter went through. The case of John Carter, the U.S. Army veteran who nearly lost his home due to the corrupt actions of his HOA board members, has become a rallying cry for reform. While the sentencing of Linda Harper and Robert Mills brought a measure of justice, it also exposed glaring flaws in the system that governs homeowners associations across the country. For many, Carter's story is not just an isolated incident, but a symptom of a much larger problem, one that demands immediate attention and systemic change. Homeowners associations, or HOAs, were originally created to maintain property values and ensure community standards. However, over the years, the power wielded by these organizations has grown significantly, often with little oversight or accountability. In many cases, HOAs operate like mini-governments with the authority to impose fines, enforce rules, and even foreclose on homes for unpaid dues. While these powers can be necessary for maintaining order, they also create opportunities for abuse, as seen in Carter's case. The abuse of power by Harper and Mills was not just a personal vendetta against Carter, it was a stark example of how unchecked authority can lead to corruption. By forging documents, falsifying records, and bypassing legal protocols, the duo demonstrated a blatant disregard for the law and the rights of homeowners. Their actions were not only unethical, but also a violation of the trust placed in them by their community. This case has sparked a nationwide conversation about the need for greater oversight and regulation of HOAs to prevent similar abuses in the future. One of the key issues highlighted by Carter's case is the lack of transparency in many HOAs. Homeowners often have little say in how their HOA is run, with board members making decisions behind closed doors. This lack of accountability can create an environment where corruption thrives. In response, advocates are calling for reforms that would require HOAs to operate more transparently, including holding open meetings, providing detailed financial reports, and allowing homeowners to vote on major decisions. Another area of concern is the legal protections available to homeowners. In many states, the laws governing HOAs are heavily skewed in favor of the associations, leaving homeowners with few options when disputes arise. For example, while HOAs have the power to place liens on properties and initiate foreclosure proceedings for unpaid dues, homeowners often have limited recourse if they believe they are being treated unfairly. This imbalance of power has led to calls for stronger legal protections for homeowners, including the right to challenge HOA decisions in court and the establishment of independent oversight bodies to mediate disputes. Carter's case has also brought attention to the financial burdens that HOAs can impose on homeowners. While HOA dues are intended to cover the costs of maintaining common areas and amenities, they can become a significant financial strain for families, particularly those facing economic hardship. In Carter's case, his struggles to keep up with HOA dues were exacerbated by the harassment and illegal actions of Harper and Mills. Advocates are pushing for reforms that would make HOA dues more affordable and provide assistance to homeowners who are struggling to pay, such as payment plans or hardship exemptions. The treatment of veterans in particular has become a focal point of the reform movement. Carter's story resonated deeply with veterans and their families, many of whom have faced similar challenges when transitioning back to civilian life. For those who have sacrificed so much for their country, the idea of losing their home due to bureaucratic overreach is especially galling. In response, veterans advocacy groups are calling for special protections for veterans, such as exemptions from certain HOA fees or additional legal support when disputes arise. The push for reform has gained momentum at both the state and federal levels. Lawmakers in several states have introduced legislation aimed at curbing the powers of HOAs and increasing protections for homeowners. These proposals include measures to limit the ability of HOAs to foreclose on homes, require greater transparency in HOA operations, and provide homeowners with more avenues for recourse when disputes arise. At the federal level, there have been calls for a national standard to regulate HOAs and ensure that homeowners' rights are protected across the board. In addition to legislative changes, there is also a growing movement to empower homeowners to take a more active role in their HOAs. Many advocates believe that the best way to prevent abuse is for homeowners to get involved in their communities, attend HOA meetings, and hold board members accountable. By participating in the decision-making process, homeowners can help ensure that their HOA operates fairly and transparently. For John Carter, the fight for reform is deeply personal. While he is relieved that justice was served in his case, he knows that his story is just one example of a much larger issue. "This isn't just about me," he said. "It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." Carter has become an outspoken advocate for HOA reform, using his platform to raise awareness and push for change. His courage and determination have inspired others to speak out about their own experiences with HOA abuse, creating a groundswell of support for reform. The case of John Carter versus the HOA is a powerful reminder of the importance of accountability, fairness, and the need to protect those who have sacrificed so much for their country. It is a story of resilience, courage, and the enduring fight for justice, a fight that is far from over. As the movement for reform gains momentum, there is hope that meaningful change is on the horizon, ensuring that no one else has to endure what John Carter went through. In the end, the call for reform is not just about fixing a broken system. It's about restoring faith in the idea that everyone deserves a fair shot at the American dream. For Carter and countless others, that dream includes the right to a safe and secure home, free from the threat of abuse and exploitation. As the nation grapples with the lessons learned from this case, one thing is clear: the fight for justice is far from over, and the call for reform will continue until every homeowner is protected.